Archangel Michael says, "Do not scroll past this message. Stop for a moment because heaven has arranged this encounter with perfect timing. Before the sun sets today, something has already shifted concerning your life. Somewhere, a decision has just been made about you, and God does not want you to walk into the rest of this day without knowing what is happening behind the scenes. This is not an accident. This is not a coincidence. If your eyes have landed on these words, it is because your spirit was meant to hear them. The next few minutes may explain questions you have carried for weeks, months, or even years. You have sensed that something was changing, haven't you? There has been an unusual feeling deep within your heart that you could not explain. Perhaps you woke up today with an unexpected heaviness. Perhaps you felt unusually peaceful without knowing why. Maybe you have noticed that certain people have been acting differently around you, speaking less than usual, or avoiding conversations they once welcomed. You dismissed those feelings because you wanted to believe everything was normal. But your spirit noticed what your mind could not yet understand. Archangel Michael says, "Someone has made a decision concerning you. Before fear begins filling your thoughts, listen carefully. Heaven did not bring you here to create panic. Heaven brought you here to prepare your heart with truth. Not every decision made about you carries the power to determine your future. Human choices are limited, but God's purpose remains greater than every opinion, every conversation, and every hidden plan. There are moments when people gather, speak your name, form opinions, and make choices without ever realizing that heaven is listening. They believe their words carry the final authority. They imagine they control outcomes. But they cannot see the invisible hand of God quietly directing events beyond their understanding. Many times in your life, decisions were made against you that never succeeded because God had already spoken a greater promise over your future. Archangel Michael says, "For some time now, unseen battles have been taking place around your destiny. While you focused on daily responsibilities, heaven continued fighting battles you never knew existed. Doors that refused to open were not always disappointments. Some of them were divine protection. Opportunities that suddenly disappeared were not always losses. Some of them were merciful redirections leading you away from hidden sorrow. You have asked yourself why certain people became distant without explanation. Why conversations suddenly stopped. Why invitations never came. Why relationships that seemed secure unexpectedly changed. Those questions have quietly followed you because your heart wanted understanding more than revenge. Today, heaven begins answering those questions one piece at a time. Archangel Michael says, "Someone recently reached a conclusion about you. Perhaps they underestimated you. Perhaps they believed you would never recover from past disappointments. Perhaps they assumed your silence meant weakness or your patience meant defeat. They saw only what their eyes allowed them to see. They never recognized what heaven had been building inside you throughout every difficult season." The greatest mistake people often make is judging a person by their current chapter instead of the story God is still writing. While others looked at your delays, heaven saw preparation. While others focused on your struggles, heaven focused on your growth. Every difficult season strengthened qualities that comfort could never produce. Archangel Michael says, "You have changed more than you realize. There was a time when criticism would have broken your confidence. There was a time when rejection would have convinced you to stop trying. There was a time when disappointment would have stolen your hope for weeks, but look at you now. You still feel pain, but you no longer remain trapped inside it. You still experience uncertainty, but it no longer controls every decision. This quiet transformation has not gone unnoticed in heaven. Someone expected you to remain exactly as you were. They believed old wounds would continue defining your future. What they did not anticipate was God's healing power working silently within your heart. The person they thought they understood no longer exists. You have been growing while they were looking away. Archangel Michael says, "Do not become distracted trying to discover the identity of the person who made this decision. At this moment, the name matters less than the lesson. If heaven wanted your attention fixed upon another individual, God would have revealed everything immediately. Instead, He first wants your heart anchored in faith so that when greater understanding arrives, you will respond with wisdom instead of fear. There is another truth you must hear. Not every closed conversation is a lost opportunity. Sometimes God allows people to reach incorrect conclusions because those conclusions become the very reason He redirects your life toward something greater. Rejection has often been the bridge leading faithful people into unexpected blessings. Archangel Michael says, "Before this day comes to an end, watch carefully for small confirmations. They may appear through an unexpected message, a conversation that changes your perspective, a surprising opportunity, or an unusual sense of peace that settles over your heart. Heaven often announces significant changes through quiet moments rather than dramatic events. You have spent too much time believing that your future depended upon the approval of people. Today, heaven gently reminds you that your destiny has never rested in human hands. God can open doors no person can close, and He can close doors that no person should open. The opinions of others may influence temporary circumstances, but they cannot overturn the purpose heaven established before you were born." Archangel Michael says, "As the hours pass, another hidden piece of this story will begin revealing itself. You may suddenly remember a conversation that once seemed unimportant. You may recognize a pattern you previously overlooked. You may finally understand why certain events unfolded exactly as they did. Do not ignore these moments. They are not random. They are the first signs that heaven is connecting pieces of a picture you have only seen in fragments. The decision someone made about you has already set unseen events into motion. But what they never expected, and what you are about to discover, is that while they were making plans based on what they believed, God had already made a greater decision concerning your life, one that no human choice can cancel. And in the next part of this journey, heaven will begin revealing why that divine decision was established long before anyone ever spoke your name. Archangel Michael says, "The divine decision concerning your life was established long before anyone ever spoke your name. That is why you must not allow today's circumstances to determine tomorrow's expectations. While someone was quietly making a decision about you, heaven had already declared something greater. Human judgment may delay a moment, but it cannot destroy God's purpose. What was written in eternity cannot be erased by temporary opinions. You may have spent countless nights wondering why certain opportunities disappeared just when they seemed within reach. You questioned why conversations ended without explanation. You wondered why doors that looked promising suddenly closed before you could step through them. Today, heaven is inviting you to see those moments from a different perspective. What appeared to be loss was often protection. What felt like rejection was often redirection. What seemed like an ending was quietly becoming the beginning of something your heart was not yet prepared to receive. Archangel Michael says, "There is a conversation that recently took place without your knowledge. Your name was mentioned. Assumptions were made. Conclusions were reached. But what those involved could not see was that heaven was already present before the first word was spoken. Every sentence they formed was limited by human understanding, while God's wisdom saw every detail from beginning to end. They believed they understood your story because they had seen one chapter. God understood your story because He is the author of every chapter. Many faithful people become discouraged when they discover that others have misunderstood them. They spend precious energy trying to explain themselves to everyone around them. But heaven is reminding you today that not every misunderstanding requires your defense. Sometimes God allows people to believe what they choose because He is preparing to reveal the truth through your life rather than through your arguments. Archangel Michael says, "You have been tempted to prove yourself, to convince others that they judged you unfairly, to explain motives they never understood. Yet wisdom often remains silent while truth quietly unfolds over time. There is a peace that comes when you realize that your reputation is safest in God's hands. He knows how to restore what others misrepresented without requiring you to fight every battle yourself. The decision made about you has already produced consequences, but not the consequences people expected. While someone believed they were closing one path, heaven was opening another. While someone thought they were limiting your future, God was expanding it in a direction you had never imagined. This is why faith must remain stronger than appearances. What looks like a setback today may become tomorrow's greatest testimony. Archangel Michael says, "Have you noticed how often your greatest blessings arrived through unexpected routes? Rarely did they come exactly as you planned. Instead, they appeared after detours, delays, disappointments, and moments when you almost gave up. That pattern is repeating once again. Heaven is teaching you not to place your confidence in familiar paths, but in the faithful God who creates new ones. There is someone listening who has quietly believed that an opportunity has been permanently lost. Hear this carefully. If that opportunity truly belonged to God's perfect purpose for your life, He is fully able to restore it or replace it with something greater. Never confuse a closed human door with a closed heavenly door. God is not limited by the decisions of people. Archangel Michael says, as this day continues, pay close attention to what stirs peace within your spirit rather than what stirs panic within your mind. Fear often speaks first because it is loud. Truth usually arrives quietly, bringing confidence instead of confusion. Learn to recognize the difference. The voice of heaven never manipulates you through panic. It guides you through wisdom, patience, and peace. The enemy hopes you will react before you pray. He hopes emotion will replace discernment. He hopes disappointment will convince you to abandon what heaven is still preparing. But today, choose another response. Pause before acting. Pray before speaking. Trust before assuming. Some of the greatest victories are won simply because God's children refuse to let fear make their decisions. Archangel Michael says, there is another reason heaven interrupted your day. The decision made about you is connected to something much older than today's events. It reaches back to prayers you prayed months ago, requests you almost forgot, tears that fell when no one else was watching. While you believed those prayers had disappeared into silence, heaven was arranging circumstances that required far more preparation than you realized. You are about to witness how God answers prayers in ways that often look completely different from what was originally expected. The answer may not arrive wearing the appearance you imagined, but it will carry the peace, wisdom, and purpose that only heaven can provide. When you recognize it, you will understand why waiting was necessary. Archangel Michael says, do not lose heart because of temporary uncertainty. Before the sun sets, something inside you will begin changing even if everything around you appears the same. Your confidence will become steadier. Your faith will become deeper. Your understanding will become clearer. And that inner transformation will prepare you for the outward changes that are already moving toward you. Yet there is still one hidden truth you have not seen. It concerns the real reason someone made that decision about you in the first place. They believed they were acting from knowledge, but they were actually acting from incomplete understanding. And what heaven is about to reveal next will explain why God allowed that decision to happen at exactly this moment, and why it may become one of the greatest turning points of your entire journey. Archangel Michael says, the reason God allowed that decision to happen at exactly this moment is because heaven knew you were finally strong enough to receive the truth without allowing bitterness to take root in your heart. Had this happened a year ago, your response might have been driven by hurt. Had it happened even a few months ago, disappointment may have convinced you that everything was falling apart. But today, something inside you has changed. Your faith has matured. Your discernment has deepened. Your heart has learned that God's plans are always greater than human intentions. There are seasons when the Lord allows hidden motives to surface, not to shame you, but to free you. You have prayed for wisdom, yet wisdom often arrives through revelation. You asked God to show you who truly belongs in your life, and now heaven is answering that prayer in ways you never expected. Not everyone who walks beside you is assigned to walk with you forever. Some people are part of your lesson, while others are part of your destiny. Learning the difference is one of the greatest gifts heaven can give. Archangel Michael says, do not be discouraged because someone underestimated your value. People can only judge what they are able to see. They saw your struggle, but not your prayers. They saw your delays, but not God's preparation. They saw your silence, but not the spiritual battles you were winning every single day. Heaven witnessed every tear you wiped away in private, every prayer whispered when no one else was listening, and every act of faith you chose when giving up would have been easier. The decision made about you says more about the understanding of the person who made it than it does about your future. Some people make choices based on fear. Others act from jealousy, insecurity, misunderstanding, or incomplete information. But God's decisions are never based on assumptions. They are rooted in perfect wisdom, perfect love, and complete knowledge of your beginning, your present, and your future. Archangel Michael says, "Have you noticed how God has been teaching you not to depend so heavily on the approval of others? There was a time when one negative opinion could steal your peace for days. One rejection could make you question your calling. One closed door could convince you that your future was disappearing. But look how far He has brought you. Today your confidence is growing from a different source. It is no longer built upon applause. It is built upon the quiet assurance that God knows exactly where He is leading you. That confidence is about to become one of your greatest strengths. In the days ahead, you will face situations where other voices try to influence your decisions. Some will encourage you to act from fear. Others will urge you to compromise your convictions for temporary comfort. But because of what God has been building inside you, you will recognize the difference between the voice of pressure and the voice of peace. Archangel Michael says, "The Lord is asking you to stop looking backward with regret and start looking forward with expectation. The chapter behind you has already served its purpose. It taught you perseverance. It developed wisdom. It strengthened your faith. But it was never meant to become your permanent home. You cannot fully embrace what God is placing before you while continually mourning what He has already called you to leave behind. There is another hidden truth unfolding even now. While someone believed they were making a final decision concerning your future, heaven was quietly moving another person into position. You do not know their name yet. You have not seen the opportunity they carry. But at this very moment, God is aligning conversations, circumstances, and timing in a way that only He can. One decision may have closed a familiar path, but another decision, guided by God's hand, is preparing to open a far greater one. Archangel Michael says, "Do not rush ahead of heaven. One of the greatest temptations during seasons of uncertainty is to force answers before God's timing. Resist that temptation. Continue walking faithfully. Continue praying sincerely. Continue trusting patiently. Every promise has an appointed time, and every divine appointment arrives at exactly the right moment. You may soon receive news that surprises you. At first, you may not know whether to celebrate or to question it. Before reacting, bring it before the Lord. Ask Him for discernment rather than assumptions. Heaven delights in guiding those who seek wisdom with humble hearts. The answer you receive through prayer will give you greater peace than anything fear could ever offer." Archangel Michael says, "Remember this above all else. No decision made by another person has the authority to cancel God's covenant over your life. Human beings may reject you, misunderstand you, overlook you, or underestimate you, but they cannot erase what heaven has written. The calling God has placed upon your life remains secure because it is established by His faithfulness, not by human approval." And now, as another layer of this mystery begins to unfold, heaven is preparing to reveal something even more personal. The person who made that decision believed they were determining your future, but they never realized that God was using their choice as the very doorway into the blessing you have been praying for. In the next part of this journey, you will begin to see how what appeared to be a painful setback was actually the first step toward a miracle that had been prepared long before this day ever arrived. Archangel Michael says, "The miracle that had been prepared long before this day ever arrived is much closer than you realize. What appeared to be a painful setback was never the end of your story. It was the turning point heaven had already written into your journey. You could not see it while you were living through the disappointment because pain has a way of narrowing our vision. But now God is inviting you to step back and look at your life through His eyes instead of your fears. When you do, you will discover that every delay, every unanswered question, and every unexpected change has been quietly leading you toward this very moment. There is something remarkable about God's timing. It rarely matches human expectations, yet it always arrives with perfect precision. You prayed for immediate answers, but heaven was preparing lasting ones. You asked for quick solutions, but God was building an unshakable foundation beneath your feet. Had everything happened according to your schedule, you might have celebrated too early and missed the greater blessing waiting beyond the delay. Archangel Michael says, "The person who made that decision about you believed they were closing a chapter. They assumed they understood the full picture, yet they only saw the surface of your life. They did not witness the prayers you whispered when no one else was listening. They did not see the tears that became seeds of faith. They did not know that while you appeared to be standing still, heaven was transforming your heart into something stronger than it had ever been before. Never forget this truth. God often works most powerfully in places where people assume nothing is happening. A seed buried beneath the soil appears forgotten until the day it breaks through the ground with undeniable life. In the same way, your season of waiting has not been empty. It has been filled with unseen growth. The roots of your faith have been stretching deeper than you could ever imagine, preparing you to carry blessings that would have overwhelmed the person you used to be. Archangel Michael says, "Have you noticed how your perspective has begun to change? Situations that once caused panic now lead you to prayer. Circumstances that once filled you with fear now remind you to trust. This is not because life has become easier. It is because God's presence has become more real to you. Heaven has been teaching you that peace does not come from controlling every outcome. Peace comes from knowing the one who holds every outcome in his hands." There is another reason this message reached you today. Before the sun sets, you will likely face a moment that seems ordinary to everyone else. It may be a conversation, a phone call, an unexpected delay, or even a quiet moment alone with your thoughts. Do not overlook it. Sometimes God hides life-changing revelations inside simple moments because he wants your heart to recognize his voice rather than depend upon dramatic signs. Archangel Michael says, "Someone who underestimated you will eventually witness what God is doing in your life. Not so they will be humiliated, but so they will understand that no one can stand against the plans of the Lord. Do not spend your energy hoping they regret their decision. Instead, pray that when they see God's faithfulness in your life, their own hearts may be drawn closer to him." True victory is not revenge. True victory is remaining faithful while God writes the ending. You have spent enough time carrying invisible burdens that heaven never asked you to bear. The weight of proving yourself. The pressure of meeting everyone's expectations. The fear of being misunderstood. Today, God is gently asking you to lay those burdens down. Your assignment is not to convince every person of your value. Your assignment is to remain faithful to the purpose he has placed within you. Archangel Michael says, "There are blessings already moving toward your life that do not require endless striving. You have believed that every breakthrough depended entirely upon your own effort. While diligence is important, never forget that divine favor accomplishes what human strength alone never could. There are doors that only God can open. There are hearts that only God can soften. There are opportunities that only God can arrange. The decision someone made about you has already begun producing consequences they never expected. What they intended as limitation is becoming preparation. What they believed would slow you down is quietly redirecting you toward a path where your gifts will be appreciated instead of overlooked. Heaven wastes nothing. Even painful experiences become tools in the hands of a loving God. Archangel Michael says, "In the coming days, guard your heart carefully. Not because danger is greater than God's protection, but because your peace is valuable. Refuse to let bitterness enter where grace has already begun healing. Refuse to let fear replace faith. Refuse to let temporary disappointments convince you that eternal promises have changed. God's character remains the same yesterday, today, and forever. You may soon notice confirmations appearing one after another. A scripture that speaks directly to your heart. An encouraging conversation that arrives at the perfect moment. An unexpected opportunity that reminds you God has not forgotten your name. These are not coincidences. They are gentle reminders that heaven is actively involved in the details of your life. Archangel Michael says, "As this revelation continues unfolding, another truth is waiting just beyond what you can currently see. The decision made about you was only the beginning. The greater story is about the decision God made concerning you before the foundation of the world. And when that truth is fully revealed, you will understand why no human judgment, no closed door, and no season of waiting has ever possessed the power to cancel the extraordinary purpose that heaven has prepared for your life from the very beginning." Archangel Michael says, "The extraordinary purpose that heaven has prepared for your life from the very beginning has never depended upon the approval of people. It has always rested upon the faithfulness of God. This is why the decision someone made about you cannot carry the final word. They may have believed they were shaping your future, but only the Creator has the authority to establish your destiny. What heaven has spoken over your life remains secure, even when the voices around you say otherwise. There is a reason your heart has been feeling different recently. You have sensed an unusual mixture of expectation and uncertainty. One moment you feel hopeful, and the next you wonder if you are imagining everything. That inner tension is often present when one season is ending and another is about to begin. You are standing between what was and what will be. It is not always a comfortable place, but it is a sacred one because it is where faith learns to trust without seeing. Archangel Michael says, "Someone listening to this message has been carrying disappointment far longer than anyone realizes. You have smiled when others expected you to smile. You have encouraged people while quietly needing encouragement yourself. You have remained faithful when it would have been easier to walk away. Heaven has seen every hidden sacrifice. Not one act of obedience has gone unnoticed. Every time you chose kindness instead of bitterness, every time you chose forgiveness instead of revenge, and every time you chose hope instead of despair, your spirit grew stronger than you understood. The world often celebrates visible victories, but heaven celebrates faithful hearts. Long before anyone applauds your breakthrough, God has already rejoiced over every quiet decision you made to remain faithful during the hardest chapters of your journey. Those unseen victories are becoming the foundation of the visible blessings that are now approaching. Archangel Michael says, "There is another reason God allowed this message to reach you before sunset. The hours ahead are not meant to fill you with anxiety. They are meant to fill you with expectation. Too often you have anticipated disappointment because past experiences taught you to protect your heart. But heaven is inviting you to expect God's goodness instead of fearing another setback. Faith grows stronger when expectation replaces anxiety. You have asked the Lord many times, "When will my season change?" Today, heaven answers with gentle assurance. Your season has already begun changing, even if the evidence is still unfolding. The greatest changes often begin within the heart before they appear in circumstances. Your thinking has changed. Your priorities have changed. Your prayers have changed. Those inner transformations are the first signs that outward transformation is already on its way. Archangel Michael says, "The person who made that decision never realized they were becoming part of God's greater plan. What they intended as a conclusion became a new beginning. What they thought was an ending became an introduction to something they could never have imagined." Heaven has a remarkable way of taking ordinary human decisions and weaving them into extraordinary divine purposes. There are moments when God allows people to step away because He is preparing room for those who are truly assigned to your future. You have mourned relationships that heaven had already released. You have grieved opportunities that no longer fit the direction God was leading you. Yet every empty space He creates is preparing for something better to enter. Trust the wisdom of the one who sees what you cannot. Archangel Michael says, "Do not allow loneliness to convince you that you have been abandoned. Sometimes God removes noise, so you can clearly hear His voice. Sometimes He allows silence because it becomes the classroom where wisdom is developed. Some of the deepest revelations are received not in crowded places, but in quiet moments where your heart is fully available to Him. You may soon notice someone reaching out unexpectedly. A conversation that seemed impossible may suddenly become possible. A door you assumed was permanently closed may begin opening in an entirely new way. If this happens, do not respond from old wounds. Respond from the healed heart God has been building within you. Let wisdom guide your words and peace guide your decisions." Archangel Michael says, "The blessing ahead will require discernment. Not every opportunity deserves your attention simply because it appears attractive. Pray before you commit. Listen before you answer. Seek God's peace before making important decisions. The same Lord who guided you through your waiting season will guide you through your season of fulfillment. There is one truth heaven wants you to remember above everything else. You are not entering this new chapter because you earned it through perfection. You are entering it because of God's grace. His mercy has carried you farther than your own strength ever could. His faithfulness has remained constant even during moments when your own faith felt small. That is the foundation upon which your future is being built. Archangel Michael says, "As the sun continues its journey across the sky today, let your heart remain open. Watch not with fear, but with quiet confidence. Heaven is already moving in ways you cannot yet fully recognize. The decision someone made about you has set events into motion, but God's decision over your life has been moving since before time began. Soon the difference between those two decisions will become unmistakably clear, and as another layer of this mystery prepares to unfold, one final question remains. Why did God allow this particular decision to happen now instead of sooner or later? The answer will reveal a connection so profound that it will change the way you see every delay, every disappointment, and every unanswered prayer. When that final truth is revealed, you will understand that this was never just about one person's decision. It was about God's perfect timing preparing you for the greatest season of your life. Archangel Michael says, "The reason God allowed this particular decision to happen now instead of sooner or later is because this was the first moment your heart was fully prepared to understand it through faith instead of fear. Had it happened earlier, you might have interpreted it as rejection. Had it happened later, you might have missed the lesson heaven intended to teach you. But today, everything has aligned with perfect precision. Your prayers, your growth, your waiting, and even your disappointments have all brought you to this exact moment." There is something extraordinary about God's timing. It often feels slow while we are waiting, yet when we finally look back, we realize every detail happened exactly when it needed to. You may have spent months asking why heaven remained silent. You wondered why doors stayed closed and why answers seemed delayed. But silence was never the absence of God's activity. It was the season where his greatest work was taking place beneath the surface. Archangel Michael says, "Someone listening today has quietly carried the belief that they somehow missed God's best for their life. You have replayed old decisions in your mind, wondering whether one mistake changed everything. Hear this with complete confidence. A surrendered heart is never beyond God's ability to redirect. His mercy is greater than your regrets. His wisdom is greater than your confusion. What he has prepared for you cannot be destroyed by a single wrong turn when your life remains in his hands. The decision someone made about you has become a mirror. It revealed more than their opinion. It revealed what God has already been healing inside your own heart. Notice your response. Months ago, you might have reacted with anger. Years ago, you might have questioned your worth. But now, while the pain is still real, there is also peace growing within you. That peace is evidence that heaven has been transforming you long before this moment arrived. Archangel Michael says, "Do not ignore this transformation. It is one of the greatest miracles in your life. Changed circumstances are wonderful, but a changed heart is even greater. A peaceful heart can remain steady during storms. A healed heart can love without fear. A faithful heart can keep walking even when the destination is not yet visible. This is the person God has been preparing you to become. There are conversations taking place right now that you know nothing about. There are opportunities quietly forming beyond your sight. There are people whom God is stirring, not because you demanded it, but because heaven is moving according to his perfect purpose. While you have been praying, God has been arranging. While you have been waiting, he has been preparing. While you have been wondering, he has been working." Archangel Michael says, "Very soon you will begin noticing small confirmations. Do not overlook them because they appear ordinary. One unexpected phone call, one message arriving at the perfect moment, one chance meeting, one scripture that suddenly feels as though it was written specifically for your situation. Heaven often whispers before it speaks loudly. Those who recognize the whispers are prepared for the greater revelations that follow. You have spent too much time believing that you needed everyone's understanding before moving forward. That belief ends today. Some people will never understand why God chose your path. Others will never recognize the battles you overcame simply to stand where you are today. Their understanding is not required for your obedience. God's approval has always been enough." Archangel Michael says, "The enemy hoped that this decision would discourage you. He hoped you would question your calling. He hoped you would retreat into fear and abandon the dreams God placed inside your heart. But heaven has turned what was meant to weaken you into another testimony of God's faithfulness. Every attack has only strengthened your dependence upon him. Every obstacle has deepened your trust. Remember Joseph. His brothers made decisions against him. Potiphar's wife made false accusations against him. Prison officials forgot him. Yet every human decision that appeared to harm him became another step toward the position God had already prepared. The same God who guided Joseph through betrayal and delay is guiding you today. Human decisions cannot cancel divine appointments. Archangel Michael says, as this day moves toward its close, refuse to measure God's faithfulness by what you can immediately see. Measure it by His unchanging character. He has never failed you. Even when you misunderstood His ways, He remained faithful. Even when your prayers seemed unanswered, He continued working. Even when your faith felt weak, His strength remained perfect. There is one more hidden connection you are about to discover. The person who made that decision believed they were influencing your future. But in reality, they were unknowingly fulfilling part of God's greater design. Their choice became the doorway through which heaven would lead you into a place you never would have reached otherwise. One day you will look back at this moment with gratitude instead of grief because you will clearly see the hand of God where today you only see unanswered questions. Archangel Michael says, the final revelation is now very near. It is not merely about what someone decided concerning you. It is about what God decided before the foundation of the world. When that truth is fully revealed, every fear that tried to control your heart will lose its power. Every unanswered question will begin finding its place. Every painful memory will become part of a testimony that points not to your strength, but to God's unfailing love. And in the final chapter of this message, heaven will reveal why this day was never about another person's decision. It was always about God's invitation for you to step boldly into the purpose He has been preparing for you since the very beginning. Archangel Michael says, God's invitation for you to step boldly into the purpose He has been preparing for you since the very beginning is the reason this message found you today. This was never simply about one person's opinion, one unexpected decision, or one difficult season. Heaven wanted you to see something far greater. Every event that seemed disconnected has actually been woven together with perfect wisdom. What looked like random moments were divine appointments. What appeared to be interruptions were carefully designed redirections. The hand of God has never left your life, not for a single moment. There were times when you stood at a crossroads believing that one wrong decision would destroy everything. You hesitated because fear whispered that you were not ready. Yet every time you sincerely sought God's guidance, He quietly directed your steps. Sometimes His guidance came through an unexpected delay, sometimes through a closed door, sometimes through an inner peace that could not be explained. Looking back now, you can begin to see that those moments were never obstacles. They were evidence that heaven was gently leading you away from what would have distracted you from your true calling. Archangel Michael says, the person who made that decision about you believed they understood your future. They believed they had enough knowledge to determine what should happen next. But they never saw the conversations taking place in heaven concerning your life. Before they reached their conclusion, God had already declared that your purpose would continue. Before they formed their opinion, heaven had already prepared another path. Before they closed one opportunity, another door had already begun opening beyond their sight. This is why you must never surrender your hope to the opinions of people. Human understanding is limited. People judge according to appearances. They see what happened yesterday and assume tomorrow will be the same. But God sees the hidden potential within you. He sees the prayers you have not yet finished praying. He sees the blessings that are already moving toward you. He sees the strength that is still growing inside your heart. Archangel Michael says, you have often wondered why your journey has required so much patience. Others seem to receive immediate answers while you remained in seasons of waiting. But patience has been one of heaven's greatest gifts to you. Through waiting, your faith became genuine instead of temporary. Through waiting, your character became stronger than your circumstances. Through waiting, you learned to trust God's voice above the noise of the world. There is another truth you must carry into the days ahead. Never confuse God's silence with His absence. Some of the greatest miracles recorded in Scripture were preceded by long seasons where nothing appeared to change. Abraham waited. Joseph waited. David waited. Hannah waited. Yet when God's appointed time arrived, every promise unfolded with a precision that only heaven could accomplish. Your waiting has not been punishment. It has been preparation. Archangel Michael says, very soon, someone will notice a difference in you. They may not be able to explain it, but they will recognize that your peace is no longer dependent upon circumstances. They will see a confidence that did not exist before. They will notice that you no longer chase what God has not assigned to you. This quiet confidence will become one of the strongest testimonies of your faith because it reflects a heart that has learned to rest in God's promises. The decision made about you has already fulfilled its purpose. It revealed who was willing to stand with you and who was only present while circumstances were comfortable. Do not resent those who walked away. Bless them and continue forward. Sometimes God removes people from your path because they cannot accompany you into the next chapter He has prepared. What feels like loss today often becomes protection tomorrow. Archangel Michael says, as the sun begins to move toward its setting, let your heart remain calm. You do not need to force answers. You do not need to pursue every explanation. Trust that what needs to be revealed will be revealed at the proper time. Heaven is never hurried, yet it is never late. Every promise arrives exactly when your heart is prepared to receive it with gratitude rather than pride. You may soon receive unexpected encouragement from someone you did not expect. You may discover an opportunity where you least anticipated one. You may even realize that what first appeared to be rejection was actually the beginning of your greatest blessing. When that moment comes, remember today. Remember that God asked you to trust Him before you could see the outcome. Let that memory strengthen your faith for every future season. Archangel Michael says, one final lesson remains before this message reaches its conclusion. The greatest decision ever made concerning your life was not made by another person. It was made by God when He chose to love you, to guide you, to redeem you through His grace, and to prepare good works for you long before you ever walked this earth. That decision has never changed. It has never weakened. It has never been canceled by your mistakes or by the opinions of others. And now, as this final revelation settles into your heart, heaven is preparing to leave you with one truth that will transform the way you see every challenge from this day forward. When you understand it, fear will lose its grip, peace will become your strength, and you will finally recognize that today's unexpected decision was never meant to stop your destiny. It was God's way of positioning you exactly where His greatest blessing could find you, a truth that will be fully revealed in the final chapter of this journey. Archangel Michael says, it was God's way of positioning you exactly where His greatest blessing could find you. That is the final truth heaven wanted to place within your heart before this message came to an end. You believed this day was about another person's decision, but now you can see that it has always been about God's direction. Human choices may have influenced certain moments of your journey, but they have never controlled your destiny. The Lord has been guiding your steps long before you understood why certain doors closed and others remained beyond your reach. Take a moment and look back over your life. Think about the seasons that once filled you with confusion, the relationships you thought you could never live without, the opportunities you believed were your only chance, the disappointments that left you questioning whether God had forgotten you. Today, many of those moments look different than they once did. Some of the things you cried over became the very things you later thanked God for removing. Some of the prayers that seemed unanswered were actually being answered in ways far greater than you could imagine. Archangel Michael says, this is how divine wisdom works. It sees beyond the limits of human understanding. While you prayed for one door to remain open, God was protecting you from what waited behind it. While you mourned one ending, heaven was preparing a beginning that required you to let go of what no longer belonged in your future. You could not understand it then, but now your heart is beginning to recognize the pattern of God's faithfulness. There will still be moments ahead when life feels uncertain. There will be days when answers seem delayed and questions seem endless. Do not allow those moments to erase what heaven has shown you today. Remember that every previous season eventually revealed God's goodness. The next season will be no different. The same God who carried you through yesterday has already prepared strength for tomorrow. Archangel Michael says, someone listening right now has been afraid that time has run out. You have quietly wondered whether you waited too long, whether opportunities have passed forever, or whether your best days are already behind you. Hear this truth with confidence. God's purpose is not limited by the calendar of human expectations. He is able to restore years that seemed lost. He is able to redeem seasons that appeared wasted. What seems impossible to people has always remained possible with God. The decision someone made about you cannot cancel the promise God made concerning you. People may change their minds. Circumstances may change without warning. Even your own emotions may rise and fall. But the character of God never changes. His love remains constant. His mercy remains available. His promises remain trustworthy. Build your confidence upon that unshakable foundation, and you will discover a peace that no circumstance can steal. Archangel Michael says, as you move forward from this day, choose to release every burden that does not belong to you. Release the need to understand every hidden conversation. Release the desire to prove yourself to people who have already made up their minds. Release the fear that someone else's decision can determine your future. Place those burdens into God's hands because they were never meant to remain upon your shoulders. Instead, fill your heart with gratitude. Thank God not only for the blessings you have already received, but also for the ones you cannot yet see. Gratitude prepares the heart to recognize miracles that fear often overlooks. Every morning you awaken is another opportunity to witness God's faithfulness in ways you never expected. Archangel Michael says, protect your peace in the days ahead. Be careful whose voices you allow to influence your thoughts. Not every opinion deserves a place in your heart. Measure every word against the truth of God's promises. If a voice fills you with hopelessness, fear, or despair, bring it before the Lord. His truth always produces peace, wisdom, and hope, even when it calls you to patience. You are entering a season where discernment will become one of your greatest gifts. You will begin recognizing the difference between doors God is opening and distractions that only appear attractive. Do not rush. Pray before making important decisions. Listen carefully to the quiet leading of the Holy Spirit. The same God who guided you through your waiting season will faithfully guide you through your season of fulfillment. Archangel Michael says, never forget that your testimony is still being written. The chapter you are living today is not the conclusion of your story. One day you will tell others how God carried you through seasons that once seemed impossible. You will speak of His faithfulness during moments when you thought all hope was gone. Your life will become living evidence that heaven never abandons those who continue trusting in the Lord. And now, before this message ends, receive this blessing with an open heart. May the Lord strengthen you when your faith feels weak. May He give you wisdom when decisions seem difficult. May He surround you with people who encourage your calling rather than discourage your spirit. May He open every door that belongs to His perfect will for your life and gently close every door that would lead you away from His purpose. Archangel Michael says, walk forward without fear. Walk forward without regret. Walk forward knowing that the greatest decision concerning your life has already been made by a loving God who has never stopped watching over you. Trust Him when you understand, and trust Him when you do not. His plans for you are filled with hope, peace, and a future rooted in His unfailing love. If this message has encouraged your heart today, pause for a moment and thank God for His faithfulness. Open your Bible, spend time with Him in prayer, and let His word continue to guide your steps. If you know someone who needs hope today, share this message with them so they too can be reminded that no human decision is greater than God's perfect purpose. May His peace guard your heart, His wisdom direct your path, and His presence remain with you today before sunset and throughout every season of your life. Amen.